Do you love the ocean in all its majestic glory? But you look out and you wonder, what's going on out there? What is this algae? What's going on under these rocks and in these tide pools? Who would know? Our guests today, the marine biology chicks, they know.
Just kind of fun is the idea. Are you two also from Beverly?
No.
Cool. Where?
I'm from Western Mass,
Oh, wow.
right near Sturbridge, but I went to Salem State, so I came to the area in 2003, and I've been back and forth ever since.
What did you major in at Salem State?
Marine biology.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then I moved to Florida for grad school, and that's where I met Gabby at grad school in Fort Lauderdale.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And are you from Massachusetts?
New Hampshire. Yeah, I grew up in Portsmouth, and then, kind of bounced around for a while, and then ended up in Florida, went to grad school, and then we just happened to end up both living in Beverly.
That's interesting. So you started out from the same area and then met in Florida.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
What was your were you not undergrad? I'm sorry. What did you say you're in Florida for your
Graduate.
graduate? Okay.
Yeah, so for marine biology, we both did our masters in marine biology.
So I did parasitology of deep water fish and sharks. So I was cutting things open where you were collecting.
I was looking under a microscope at larval crabs.
What was the first word you said?
Parasites.
Parasites inside of sharks?
Parasites of sharks and deep water fish. Yeah.
Do sharks and deep water fish have similar parasites?
They do. And I'll tell you, I would never eat shark after working with sharks and seeing the amount of parasites that are inside of them.
I don't think that I would eat a shark either. Regardless of knowing about the parasites.
We should all not eat sharks.
Yeah.
No, don't eat sharks.
They eat them in Iceland, right?
They still eat them around here too. So a lot of people like mako here.
Interesting.
But mako is one of the species I did, and I'll tell you right now, no thank you.
I agree. Yeah, I lived in Japan for a while, and they eat whale there and dolphin, and I was never interested in
crazy
experimenting with that.
You never tried it?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if I would bring myself to be able to try it either, but I would be really tempted. Just, it's cultural, right? I get it.
Yeah, I had poison blowfish there, and I ate horse, but that was
wow.
I don't know, there wasn't anything like noticeable about the flavor, I'd have to say.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of cultural thing. It was on the menu, and I was like, all right,
See,
where else am I gonna eat this?
We thought we were so badass in Florida eating alligator. But no, I did. I taught in China for a summer in 2019, and I saw a lot of the shark fin stuff over there, and just couldn't bring myself to eat any of it.
So they eat like a shark fin soup in China, right?
They do, yes. But it's supposed to be for like
virility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they have some kind of mythological connection to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then you look at the other side of it, and the shark fin trade is completely out of control. And what they do is they cut them off of living sharks and then throw them back in the water to either be eaten by other sharks or to drown.
It's heartless.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the poaching is a really unfortunate side of the aquatic ecosystem.
I'm a super fan of sharks, so I don't.
Have you ever been shark diving? Have you been in a cage with them?
I've never done the cage diving, and I've never seen a great white, which is something I really need to do. But diving down in Florida, we did dive with a lot of sharks down there, and it was amazing.
That's exciting.
So you're generally any snorkeling trip you'll encounter always nurse sharks, but then which are like little puppies of the ocean, but then like hammerheads all the time, lemons, hammerheads.
So are you diving or snorkeling?
Scuba diving. I like to snorkel. I won't do it up here though because you can't really see anything, and the amount of great whites that we have up here, I don't really want them coming up to my face.
Yeah.
But when I got my diving certification in Florida, the weekend that we were out diving was a weekend that there was a man that was killed by a tiger shark that day in the Bahamas.
Oh my goodness.
So after our first dive, we're hearing all this chatter on the radio, and at the time they were talking about it being a bull shark. And then we're thinking, oh, they're going to call off the dive, because we didn't know exactly how close it was to where we were. And the instructor looks at us. He's like, okay, we're getting in the water. And I was like, what?
That's terrifying.
So it was beautiful diving down there, though, especially with the barracuda, which a lot of people are afraid of. I love
Yes.
diving with barracuda.
I went snorkeling in Mexico, and I remember seeing barracuda, and I was very scared. I was about 13, but I don't know if I'd be much tougher now.
They're
so beautiful.
huge, and they just look so menacing, but they're just
Yeah.
so docile, really.
They have that same look of like sharks have, of just like nothingness.
Yes.
And you know they're just a killing machine.
Well, I had a dive instructor who was very patient with me, because I didn't grow up around the ocean, so everything was amazing to me with the ocean. And at one dive that we did down in Key Largo, he turned around at one point. I had a pufferfish in my hands, holding it out to him. And we got back into the boat, and he was like, "You are wearing gloves from here on out. You can't stop touching things." He was so mad.
Have you ever been scuba diving outside of the U.S.?
No, that's something I would like to try.
My only experience scuba diving was actually in the Philippines, and it was like a tourist thing. So we did like probably an hour of like scuba lesson, and then we went into a pool, and they'd knock your mask off, and you put it on and clear it, and then we got on a boat and went in the ocean, and we scuba
That
dived.
was your
That was
your
it.
dive instruction.
Yeah. And then
Did anybody die on your trip?
nobody died.
Okay.
But a woman did freak out because there was about 30 feet of water. And so we had weight belts. So you go like right to the bottom. They guide, you're sitting on the edge, and then you hop off and they bring you right to the bottom. And then you kind of talk for a little bit, and then they teach you how to, get buoyant and swim around. And so I'm standing on the bottom of the ocean, and the woman that came in after me it was just too much for her, like sensory overload. And she just started like flailing and like pulling and everything. And they had like two of them just like grabbed her and then brought her back to the boat. And we're like, oh, she can't come.
I think everybody should try it at least once, because
agree.
it is such a different world from
Yeah.
snorkeling, because you have the background noise with snorkeling. When you're diving, it's the most peaceful, and you really just kind of get to connect with the animals. And I remember I was on a dive boat, and it was multiple people going on, and there was a guy that was going to be spearfishing. And so he went off on the other side of the reef, and I was with my group, and I heard a dolphin under the water. And I thought, that's the coolest thing. But then I saw him shoot to the surface, and I was like, what's going on? So we get back on the boat later, and I was like, did you guys hear that dolphin? And he's like, yeah, didn't you see me swim for the boat? And he said, I had a fish on his spear, and I guess dolphins will come and attack you for the fish. So he freaked out and took off.
Wow.
But like to that point also, May, about like, how diving is just so different from snorkeling. I mean, snorkeling's amazing, but when you're snorkeling, you can maybe go 10 feet deep, right? And it's surprising to me, like what changes after 10 feet. Like the colors change, the type of fish change. Like you won't see things in the first 10 feet that you can see from like 10 to 30 and 30 to 50 and even beyond.
And I think it's so important too, because when people are interact
into the
with
mic?
different things. Oh, sorry. When people interact with different things like snorkeling, going under the water, diving, they start to care about things a little bit more because they have a personal interaction with that. So I think that's important. If you're looking at getting people to actually care about species in the ocean, is to get them to interact.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes it much more tangible when you can go into their world.
Yeah.
You can see like a fish in their living room.
Yes.
It's like Finding Nemo in real life.
Those poor things.
I guess if you do anything enough, you get more comfortable. But in my scuba diving experience, I did not find like peace or tranquility. I felt safe, I guess, but I realized that I was potentially part of the food chain at this point.
You
Whereas
are.
out here on Earth, like on the dry land, I guess it's like I feel more confident I'm not going to be eaten by something.
I mean, you could, but I mean, we have more chances probably here of getting, accidents and stuff like that.
Yes.
But no, anything can happen. I had a couple scary experiences while diving. One of them was I almost actually ran out of air. Thank God I had my dive buddy with me. Because
Never dive alone, right?
Never dive alone. I would have died that day. And I was just spent a little too much time screwing around on the bottom. And as we were coming up, there was a group ahead of us that were new, so they were hanging onto the line for an excessively long time as I'm watching my air go down, and I couldn't let go of the line because the currents were ripping. So we had to wait for them to get up, and by the time that I got to the top, I was out of air.
Was that in Florida?
That was in Florida. And then I had a couple incidents too where the boat died. So we're stuck out on the water. People are throwing up over the side left and right. And I was just staring at the horizon like, get me out of here.
At least they did a good head count before y'all came back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not like that. What was that movie?
Yeah,
Open Water.
Open Water, I think. Yeah, one of the most horrific stories.
But it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that story was based off a true event.
People get left. Yeah.
You just have to make yourself
It's really
known.
important to have a manifest, right? Be really obnoxious so that they don't forget you.
So y'all met in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
was the difference in what you were studying for your master? I'm sorry, is it master's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Master of Science. Yeah. So I studied the dispersal, like the abundance and dispersal patterns of larval crabs, like the commercially important larval crab species in Florida. So basically, if you know like where they're traveling to, then you can estimate populations based on that. So I studied, basically I just had these water samples from the Gulf Stream and I analyzed them, like the Florida current at that point down there. And so I just analyzed the water samples for the larval crabs of blue crabs, golden crabs, and stone crabs. So yeah, I stared through a microscope all day long.
And I just cut fish open all the time.
Were you in Florida during the oil spill?
Yeah. Actually, I had just graduated, so I did my. Let's see. I think I defended my thesis in like May of 2010, and then within a month, like I started working like for an environmental consulting firm out in Louisiana. It was it was really, I can't remember who said it. It comes from some leader just long ago, right? Like never let a disaster go to waste, right? Like whatever, I'm paraphrasing, but it's totally true because it was one of the best jobs I had, right? Like you don't want anything terrible like that to happen, but you're like, when's the next catastrophe? Because that was a really good opportunity for me. Like you don't want to wish it to happen, but it was pretty amazing. Yeah. So I went and worked in Louisiana on oil spill stuff for, I don't know, 4 years, I think. The money lasted a long time. Thanks, BP.
What do you think are like some long-standing effects from that? Do you think is any permanent damage, or have they been able to kind of recover that ecosystem and the animals down there?
I mean, I think that nature has definitely played a part in recovery, and then I think that all of the restoration that they've done has played a big part. Like it couldn't have done it like without all of the organizations and agencies that sort of jumped in with restoration, because so much of the like marshes and estuaries just got flattened by the oil, and it really sort of like suffocated all of that. And of course, those are essentially important for like nursery grounds for juvenile fish and crustaceans. And I mean, the shrimp down there, like those larval shrimp need, like those sort of like brackish, like kind of intertidal estuarine areas in order to, they use them as nursery grounds, like before they sort of head out into the bigger blue. Well, the shrimp don't go too far, but but the fish do, right? And so I mean, I don't know if I've looked at anything in the last couple of years, but we don't hear too much. I think a lot of it, and then of course a lot of it just sinks and settles and becomes part of like the deep sediment. So as long as we don't go digging it up, probably fine.
Yeah, it's really impressive that nature finds a way. It does a good job of
Yeah.
covering up our damages.
Yeah,
or at least
it's
recovering from them.
It's pretty impressive that, and pretty quickly too. I mean, you can notice just in a short amount of time how nature just rebounds.
Crazy.
So after y'all graduated, what brought you back to Massachusetts? You said you were in Louisiana, and where'd you go from there?
I was in Louisiana for a while, and then I went back to the Keys. I had before grad school and sort of like a little bit towards the end of grad school and after grad school, I was in the Keys. And And then so after Louisiana, I went back to the Keys and I started working which is the job I have now, but I was I'm a seafood inspector. Working for the U.S. government. So I got that job, and so I just stayed in the Keys for a while, and then I got transferred to the Fort Lauderdale office, and then I transferred up here. So
Was that a federal job? Mm-hmm. Oh wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a good gig.
The federal government. They got some money.
They do. Well, and my agency is fee for service, and so we do have money, which is kind of nice, right? So it's like we function a little bit differently than other departments or agencies that have to work off of either soft money or grants or taxpayer dollars, right? So any of those appropriated funds sort of limit you a little bit more than if you can just set your own budget. So seafood inspection program is fee for service, kind of like USDA.
You said
right?
feed for service?
Fee for service.
Fee.
Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
money.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a commercial lobster fisherman.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So he works a lot with the regulators and inspectors and things like that.
Yeah, I'm
Does
sure he
do
loves
that in
them.
Gloucester?
Actually, in a Marblehead.
Marblehead,
Yeah.
nice, nice.
Yeah, I don't work for the for the lawmaking office. I don't have anything to do with the regulations. I always tell people that because they always want to talk to me about working for National Marine Fisheries Service and that Gloucester fishermen are famous for just they even have those bumper stickers. I get it. I get it. People are regulating how you're making a living, but I'm always like, I don't work for the regulators.
And what brought you back here, Mae?
So my family's up here, so I knew after grad school that I wanted to come back to New England. I just didn't know how I was going to go about doing it. So I got a job on Nantucket because I had previously lived there and working for the shellfish department for the summer. And I got to work on boats all summer, and it was amazing. And we did really cool research out there, but it was only a seasonal position. So after that was over, I came back up here and started working at Salem State. So I teach at Salem State in the biology department, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
Yes. I'd never planned to be a teacher, but I absolutely love it. So
What do you find is different between the curriculum up here and in Florida? Is it more I don't know, tropical down there?
Oh, it's definitely more tropical. With grad school, it was different. Our grad school was different. I've never been to another grad school, so I don't know, but I feel like it was more relaxed.
Sounds about Florida.
Yeah. I mean, we used to roll in flip-flops off the beach for our classes. And it was a whole different kind of more laid-back lifestyle. But also our facility was right on the ocean, too. So it was just a very relaxing environment down there, which was great. And I got lucky. I had an amazing advisor who really pushed us. And he was
Shout out to Dave Kerstetter.
Dave Kerstetter. But his thing was that you're not just doing your research, you're helping out with everybody else's. Any opportunity that you have to jump in and help, that's what you're going to do. So I did some really cool stuff. I did some swordfish tournaments and helped out.
Do they race them or do they fight them against each other?
Yes, there was a lot of sword fishing down there. A lot of fighting. I got to work on a swordfish boat in Pompano Beach, which was really cool. And then just did some stuff down in the Keys. So we were always doing stuff on top of my full-time job. I think I'm lacking sleep still to this point, years later. But when we came back up here, Gabby ended up coming up here later than I did, and we reconnected, started hanging out. And then COVID hit, and we're like, we got to get out of the house. So I remember we went and sat on the beach and had a little picnic. And we were sitting on the beach. And I think the conversation started was what the hell's that?
Because the tide was coming in, and we were like, as you do when you're marine nerds, we were analyzing what was coming in with the tide as we were just sitting there on the beach.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people appreciate the coast. If you live by the ocean, I think you have an extra bit of love for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people are naturally curious about just seeing what's out there.
You can literally stare at the beach and the ocean and the waves and the weather forever and never get bored.
Yeah. And we were annoyed because we didn't know what this one species of seaweed was. And we're like, we should write a field guide. It started as a joke. No, I think we first said we should do some research on this.
Yeah.
And it started off as a joke. And we're like, it's COVID. What else are we doing? It's not like we're going anywhere. So we were like, oh, let's just do some research and see what happens. And it turned into 3 years of freezing our asses off on the beach. And we went and sampled every single month.
Wow.
For 3 years.
6 sites.
Yeah, 6 sites
on the North Shore.
And there was sometimes we'd get to the beach and it would just be covered in ice. It was awesome.
Any angry dogs down there?
We did have.
We had one dog that tried to pee on all of our stuff. Yeah. And then when I tried to stop and he yelped like I was killing him, and his owner turned around and looked at me, and I was like, he's peeing on our stuff.
We did get a lot of people because we look like weirdos, right? You're out on the beach.
You look like scientists.
And like we're in waders and we're making TikTok videos being idiots. So we would always get those people. You could tell there was people that would come up that were just being nosy because they had nothing else to do. And they're like, "What are you?
Really
what are
annoyed
you up
Mae.
to?"
Mm-hmm.
I had to field
Manchester?
those questions. Where we
Were
went?
you in Manchester?
We didn't do Manchester. We did.
That would have been the response there.
Yeah. Right. No, there was probably, I think we only encountered probably one person that was very like territorial.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then the rest of everybody else was like, hey, what are you guys doing? Like curious, right? I think there was only one person that was like, excuse me, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Which was probably in Magnolia because we were definitely not in the public area half the time. We were like traipsing off over into places that I'm sure was somebody's like actual property because Massachusetts weirdly like lets them own to the low tide line, not the high tide line.
But also, like, we're probably out there screaming, "Look at this!" This is the last thing these homeowners want to hear. We're doing cartwheels and just ridiculous shit.
Yeah.
So what have you found to be the biggest difference seasonally between your inspection sites?
Well, obviously, like the different types of species, like we find fish in the spring and in the fall, we found some little gunnels. And then in the spring, it's really cool because everybody's reproducing. So you've kind of got a lot of everything. And in Ipswich, we found a lot of horseshoe crabs, and we found a lobster. That was very cool.
I think one of the most fascinating things was to see, like you go out to the beach and on the rocks, there's always like barnacles, right? Like barnacles are just covering and covering. And I feel like it was like maybe twice a year. I honestly haven't looked up the actual life cycle of like the barnacle in in the north in New England to see if they settle twice a year. But it was very obvious like when they had all settled and were just the tiniest little barnacles like attached to the rocks. It's so tiny.
Yep.
That was one of the coolest things for me. And you were like, oh, they all
Super
settled.
But also it's interesting because when we started kind of doing this stuff and then we started looking into everything, there hasn't been a field guide that's been updated for our area since like 1972.
Wow, that's exciting.
And we have a ton of invasive species here that weren't here at that time. So we're finding stuff now that we know is invasive, but it wasn't included in any of the field guides.
So what's the first step in removing an invasive species?
Green crabs is a prime example, actually. So there's this.
It depends, on what the species is, right?
So the green crab is an invasive one?
Mm-hmm.
One of the best ways for something that you can consume is to just create a fishery for it, right? So they've done that in Florida with the lionfish. Create a fishery for it. They start selling it on the menus. Like, we know that we can deplete a fishery, like if we overfish it.
What is a fishery?
So any basically species that is like, so lobster is a fishery, haddock is a fishery. So a specific species that is managed, right? So usually when, I should have, instead of just say fishery, like a managed fishery.
I see.
So there are no, there weren't, I haven't looked recently since we moved from Florida, but at the time there were no regulations for lionfish, and there are not any regulations for green crabs. No. I think you still have to have a fishing license, but there's no there's no limit to how many that you can take when you go out. So they're creating a fishery for it. Mae and I went and did a little adventure and found a restaurant up in Hampton, New Hampshire, Tino's, that does a lot with green crab. And so the chef there, CJ Mars. I will find his name. The chef at Tino's works with a local woman who is a lobster fisher person, and so she pulls in a lot of green crab and she sells it to him, and he has made some of the most delicious menu items.
It's amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It's so good.
and then there's a distillery.
In New Hampshire,
Right.
it's in. Yeah, look it up.
There's a distillery in New Hampshire that makes a bourbon.
Green crab bourbon.
Green crab.
Green crab bourbon. Whoa.
So we tried that as well.
How is that? Not that good.
It's interesting.
It has an interesting flavor. That's a good way to put it.
They describe it as like tasting like a crab boil, and it's accurate.
I can
You
see that
get
some
like
people would
these
be interested in
notes
that.
of like, yeah, it's very, very strange. I don't know that I will drink it again, but I think it's really cool.
Do you think that it would affect a seafood allergy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
bet it will.
I would
Bet
think
it
so.
will.
Probably steer. I'm actually allergic to shrimp, and I think probably crab and crustaceans. so
It's usually all crustaceans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I kinda
you
stay
should
far
not
away.
try the green crab.
Yeah, don't.
I'll stay away from it.
So the concern with the green crabs. So the green crabs have been here since the 1800s.
Lift it up a little.
Oh, sorry. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So the green crabs have been here since the 1800s. They came from Europe, so they're the European green crabs. But they have successfully outcompeted our native crabs. So they've declined the populations of our native crabs.
What are our native crabs?
So we have lady crabs, we have rock crabs. They're all
Interesting
delicious.
names, yeah.
They're all delicious. So what they do, they figured out the mating habits of the native crabs and
The other crabs did?
the green crabs.
Wow.
So what the crabs will do is they have eggs that they carry. The females will carry the eggs, and when it's time for them to be released, they'll release them into the tide. So as the tide's going out, they'll release the eggs. And the green crabs now stay at the water line and will grab the eggs and eat them as they're coming out.
It's rude.
They're assholes. They're total assholes.
So these sneaky little green crabs eat the eggs
Yes.
of our beautiful lady crabs.
Yes. Total dickheads.
And now we just have a bunch of green crabs living here?
So no, the
So many.
fun story now though is that the green crabs themselves are being competed with by another invasive species that's come on the scene, the Asian crabs, who are even more vicious. So these guys will actually actively try to attack you if you pick them up, but they're
Whoa.
only like that big, so they're fine. In Beverly, we have a massive amount of them on the
Like
beaches.
basically, you'd go at low tide and turn over any rock, and you will see them just scatter.
And what is the solution to that invasion?
I'm gonna have to open a fisheries for these guys if you're gonna try to get them down.
So you continuously create a market where people want to eat the invasive species?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the difference between, is it just because they're not from this area? Like, why do we want our native species and not an invasive species?
It's not even that we don't want them. It's just the sheer amount of them just kind of overtakes everything else.
All right, because it's imbalanced.
Yep.
So they,
And
they
they
don't
will,
have a...
yeah, like they will outcompete. Like one of the problems that they found that the green crab does is that they burrow into like just the top layer of sediment where all the eelgrass is. But that, of course, is where a lot of other species use when they're juveniles. And so because it's being disrupted and they can't use it for a little safe space, like until they can like, you know, go out into the open ocean, they like the nursery grounds are just, you know, disturbed to the point where like you can lose other important species, more commercially important species. Like all the species are important to the ecosystem, right? Like all the native species are important to the ecosystem, but also commercially important species are important to the ecosystem, to the people who make money off of them, to the people who buy it in, you know, and it ends up on your plate. And so it's just has an economic impact that is more far reaching than you often kind of think of. And so then they'll also outcompete for food, right? So they'll like eat, like basically an invasive species will usually be eating the food that another native species needs. And so you'll start to see a decline in that native species. And honestly, like, I I honestly don't know of a story of successfully removing an invasive species, right? So they what did they try to do? They tried to in Hawaii.
Oh,
they had the
mongoose.
mongoose. So then they introduced pigs to eat the mongoose, and then they had this massive pig population that just was out competing, and it just
Yeah, well, the way that it started is they had a rat problem.
right.
So they brought in these they don't
Yeah.
have natural predators on the
Yeah.
island. So they're like, let's bring in this wicked, vicious animal to wipe out the rats, which they did a good job, but then they started eating all the native birds. So they're like, well, what the hell do we do now to get rid of the mongoose?
Are they not asking scientists these questions?
I don't know.
Oh.
Or are they...
Well, sometimes science needs to do a little experiment before they really understand the consequences. So
okay, no
it's always-
predators means they're going to eradicate everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of what's happening in Florida, right, with the boa constrictors?
Oh yes. And the thing is, the likely scenario is that you're never going to get rid of them. You just have to find a way to manage them.
And I think they opened a hunting season
Oh yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
So
I think all you have to do is register. I don't think there's a whole lot of restriction, and then you have to. I think you have to turn it in is the thing, because the Fish and Wildlife needs to collect data, right? So I think that was one of the stipulations. It's a free for all, but you have to go and land it, report it.
well, that's the problem in Florida too, though. Is everything is invasive in Florida.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, now we have this weird, wild thing, and you're like, of course we do.
Everything, even they have a tiny little wasp that's invasive or
geez.
something. It's half an inch long or something. It's just
Crazy.
I think one of the things they were doing, was it the wasp, or no, that might have been the mosquitoes that they were introducing
I think it was mosquitoes, right? They were trying to do something to them where they weren't interested. They couldn't reproduce, or they didn't want blood or something.
Right, they
It was-
couldn't reproduce. So were
Yeah.
they introducing sterile males into the population or sterile females, one way or the
Something,
other?
yeah.
And they were going to release them all, but it's hard because there's going to be some sort of consequence no matter what you do. You don't
think
know
we know
it
at this
when you
point.
do it. You're not going to see it until it happens, but they're usually all the stories end up.
Have we learned nothing
Something
from
goes
the
wrong.
mongoose?
Yeah, something always goes wrong. But when you think about lionfish or green crab, if we can eat them, eat them. Go eat them.
Let's eat them.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing with the lionfish. I know I was diving every weekend down in Florida, and I never saw a lionfish. And I left in 2010. And then somebody sent me a picture a year later of one of the reefs we used to go to, and it was covered.
And lionfish?
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was going to say, maybe they sleep during the day like real lions.
I think they're pretty voracious. They're out all the time. They're not afraid of anybody.
Bullies.
Even the sharks won't fuck with them.
My mother said she found this on the beach here in Beverly, Massachusetts.
Super cool.
Do you think this is from here? Or do you have any idea what it could be?
That looks tropical.
Yeah, I don't know if it
Barnacles
was
look tropical.
like a prank, or if it was dropped, or if she actually found it there. I'm not too sure. She
Yeah.
said she did. I believe her.
I would say.
Where do you think it
I
came
think the
from?
barnacles are tropical.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't look native to this area to me.
Well, here's the thing too. So because of the differences in our seasons, a lot of our barnacles are very small and flat to the rocks. They have to be, because they have to be able to retain water for extended periods of time. So I would think that would be tropical.
Wasn't there a larger one like this, though, that might have not been in our area, but maybe was farther north or farther south? I forget. One of the ones that we were looking at. I don't know. We could look it up.
Does a barnacle live inside of? So it's like a little guy, right?
And what they do is they open up. They have little hinges on the
They
outside.
make this.
Oh wow.
Like they secrete a calcium
Carbonate.
sort of substrate. So they create this, and then they attach to some barnacles. Some barnacles will have the attachment is open, right? So whatever substrate they're on, it'll be open, and some have a little plate. But the animals, always inside, and then they just come out and they have a little arm, little waspy,
They're filter feeders.
wispy arm. Like, what? Isn't that a good impression?
Yeah, it's great.
You're so good at
And
that.
Look
it's
it
like
up.
it's like a similar material to like our fingernails or something, right? Our fingernails, or
The outside.
yeah, I get, maybe it's obviously stronger, but I guess I don't know. I was
Oh,
trying to
so
think
it's
of
calcium carbonate. It's almost
Yeah.
like snails. And that's another interesting thing, though, because a lot of organisms make their own shells. So when we are removing shells from the beach, which a lot of people do, we're actually removing the potential for them to reuse that calcium carbonate for growing
Sorry,
themselves.
snails.
I know.
Sorry for taking you home.
It's awful. We all do it.
It's a human condition.
That's an old queen conch.
A queen conch.
Yeah, that was a pretty old one. You can tell by how thick the shell is, like on the edge.
Oh, you mean like the actual age of? I think you meant like 19. I was gonna say it's like my grandmother brought this back somewhere from.
You're like, it is
tropical.
old.
Yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah, they're like Keys and Bahamas.
Wow. So this one lived. How long do they? You said a queen conch,
Queen.
and
yeah.
what's their like average lifespan?
I don't remember.
Is that the ones they make the conch chowder out of?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so
They make a
good.
chowder out of this.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
good in the
Interesting.
Bahamas.
Conch fritters, conch
It
chowder,
looks so beautiful, and they just.
conch ceviche.
And then this right here is a moon snail.
Yeah, these are native. Are they native to?
Yeah.
Massachusetts?
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
actually have a lot of them in Ipswich. If you
They're
go up to
kinda
Queen's
assholes,
Beach.
too.
Yeah.
Are they assholes?
Oh my
I
gosh,
never
they're
think of a
vicious.
snail.
Because of the
as-
way they eat.
Wow.
They're carnivorous.
I've never thought of a snail as an asshole in my life.
I mean, we can find a lot of assholes on the shores here.
I think they're like
They would like they'll
cute, but
because they have like this real. You know
Yeah,
how
this-
snails
the
like
whole,
have
like,
a foot,
sucker
right,
thing.
that comes out, but theirs is
They have
like
a foot?
massive.
oh, you call it a foot.
You call it a foot.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like our feet.
All right. So the big thing on the bottom is
Yeah.
their foot.
Yes.
Okay.
And the moon snails have really big one, and so they'll just like encompass the whole thing, and then they drill down. If it's like, say they're like going after that queen conch, and then they would just
They
like
would go
drill down through the shell, and then
They would
And then
they'd
kill
eat
it.
in through the shell and then eat the other snail. Wow, this is a whole world. I
Yeah,
had no
so
idea
they're
what's going
total
on.
Dickheads.
Yeah, I always thought they were just like fun little guys that ate algae or something. They just kind of crawled around the rocks and ate algae.
a lot of snails do eat algae.
Okay, but then there's big asshole snails.
Yeah,
too.
and, and nature is vicious. Nature's
Yes.
vicious.
Wow.
So what we want to do with the field guide is we obviously can't take anything very seriously. So we are going to do a little bit of a different twist with it. And especially since we have a lot of invasives and we have a lot of species that are just trying to survive. And by doing that, they don't behave very well. So we're actually going to, on each page, we're going to give the information, but then on the next page, we're going to have that organism with like a word bubble, basically telling us what kind of asshole they are.
That's fun. A little personification.
Where they fall into
Yeah,
the whole realm of
It's
being
like
a jerk.
their chance to like give their little bio of themselves.
That's awesome.
We want it to definitely be something useful, right? That you can just like grab and go to the beach with. But we also just don't want it to be like we want it to be scientifically accurate and informative, but we also don't want it to be so dry and
Yeah.
drab, right?
Absolutely.
So we want to like give like fun facts and anecdotes like about all the creatures that you see here because there's just so many and you don't know these things, right? Like most people don't know that there are carnivorous snails.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah. We think of them as sweet little, like, they just go around, like, scraping algae off and eating algae, which is really good for stuff, but some of them vicious.
Consume other snails alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have oyster drills that do the same thing.
Do you ever hear the snail scream when you're scuba diving?
Wouldn't that be terrifying?
Yes.
So we do have some little species of rockfish here. If you do pull them out of the water, they do scream.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I might have to try that. Where do you find a rockfish?
Actually, you can go to Dane Street Beach. We have one of the best tide pools there.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of really cool stuff there in the spring.
Which side of Dane Street is like the riverside or the?
So if
like,
you are standing looking at the beach, on the right-hand
the right,
side where all
the
those
Salem
rocks
side.
are, like where that little jetty is that goes
that's
out.
one of the best tide pools in the
Yep.
area.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like super low tide. So the best time to go to tide pools is when there's a negative tide. So if you look at a tide chart, like low tides will, I don't know, like a low tide can hover around like 0, but when it's negative, it means it's really, really low. And you can, at Dane Street Beach, like you can have that tide be almost out to that sandbar. And there'll just be like that little, like kind of like, you know, it looks like a wading pool, right, that you have to walk through like to get to the sandbar. But the rest of it will just be uncovered except for like little pools of water everywhere. And especially if you go at night. So a negative tide at night, Dane Street Beach.
What do you
take
use
a little headlamp?
I was to say a flashlight or something.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never.
I mean, you look like a fucking idiot, but
It is.
it is so cool.
It is the best. It like you just walk out into the tide pool and just stand there and shine your light, and there is so much going on. All these tiny little shrimp that are just scooting around, and fish, and well, we see the rockfish and gunnels, like these little gunnels, and then I mean,
Hermit crabs are hilarious. They're ridiculous. You just watch them like have little fights and chasing each other around. We saw one crab that went after a jellyfish,
Oh wow.
and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know where you think you're going with this, but okay.
Yeah, that sounds like a Disney movie.
So it's been a very interesting.
yeah,
That is interesting. And I would think going down there at night, you'd feel kind of silly, but I mean, it's, I don't know. Again, it's like the community of like ocean loving people. They're gonna be like, oh, I get it. Like someone would drive by and they'd be like my mother told me she's been swimming, and then people have like stopped, gone home, got their swimsuit, and come back to the beach and like, hey, I saw you in here, and like I realized I could do this.
that's awesome.
Now I'm in it too.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm that brave in the winter. I still see people out there, and I'm like, and I'm cold just standing there watching them, and I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I hear it's really good for you, though.
I did it one time. Put on put on a wetsuit and got in the water with her, and it was about 10 minutes later, I turned around, I was out. I was like, I'll stand here and watch. But
even with the wetsuit on.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that don't. They don't put anything on. They just dive right on in.
Yep.
Oh, all the New Year's on New Year's Day. There's so many different groups all over that jump in.
We actually saw that when we were sampling at one of our beaches.
the polar plunge.
Yes, and we were just like, they're crazy. And we're there in our waders and like 5 sweaters.
Yeah. No.
From all of your aquatic experiences, what do you feel is each of your favorite species?
Mine is, just with our research or in general?
In general, everything
Bull
across
shark.
the board.
Bull shark.
Bull
Yeah,
shark.
hands down, bull shark.
That's fun. Maybe a good T-shirt. Catch the tone in it somehow.
No, they're absolutely amazing. Their physiology is amazing. They can live in freshwater and saltwater, brackish water. They are the #1 species of shark that would be responsible for unprovoked attacks. Most sharks will give warning signals before they attack.
I'm going to bite you.
Yeah, but some of them, it's almost like, did you ever go in somebody's house and they have a dog?
Yes.
Okay, and you can see if a dog is either going to be friendly with you or they're not. And it's their body posture. They might hunch up a little bit. Sharks will do something very similar.
Interesting.
So sharks will start to show aggressive behavior. They'll swim erratically, and they do hunch up too. And for people that don't know that, like I've been out snorkeling before in Key Largo, and sharks have come up, and people have been kind of chasing the sharks, and the sharks showing very aggressive, erratic behavior. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Not smart, man.
Yeah.
They're just letting you know, like you are in their space, and they're not cool with it.
Yeah.
But some people don't. It would be like when somebody gets attacked by a dog and they're like, well, I didn't know. Well, because they were growling at you and you can still were going towards them. But bull sharks don't do that. Bull sharks will just attack. They don't give any signs of aggression prior to an attack.
They're like an assassin.
Yeah, they're the assholes of the shark world.
And they can swim into fresh water and eat people
Yes.
who are swimming in rivers.
Yeah.
And that resonates with you?
I just think they're absolutely amazing. Like, how cool is that they can live in these different environments?
No,
It's
and-
very cool.
And
It's a
they
little-
don't give a shit about anything, and they're not afraid of anything.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. I think it was Discovery Channel, or one of them did like a special about, I think it was in the 1800s. A shark went up a river,
Yeah.
Delaware River
It was
maybe?
Mattawan Creek in 1918.
In New Jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
They
And
didn't know
terrifying.
why these children were disappearing. Because why would a shark be in the river?
Yeah.
so they actually did find out after the fact they thought that it was a great white at the time because that was
More
the shark that
entertaining.
was more terrifying to
Yeah.
people. And they did find a juvenile great white.
Thank you, Richard Dreyfuss.
They did find a juvenile great white outside the mouth of that river that had human remains in it, but it was probably scavenging. But then they figured out way after the fact that a great white couldn't have made it up that far in brackish water and successfully survived. So it was a bull shark.
I think that was when they learned like exactly how versatile like those bull sharks could
Well,
be.
at the time when these attacks were happening, so the second person that was killed was the son of a doctor, and the doctor couldn't even save him because they thought at the time that shark had poison in them, so he was bloodletting him, trying to get the poison out, not realizing
That there was no poison in him.
yeah. So it was just such a like misinformed time.
Yeah, for sure. Poisonous sharks. That'd be another layer of intimidation.
They would live in
Sharknadoes.
Australia for sure. Like with all the other things that kill you. So many things that kill you in Australia.
I mean, it could happen. We'll see. I just think sharks are amazing in general.
They definitely are.
Sharks.
They've been around forever, and they're certainly an intimidating factor in the ocean.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they are very important to the ecosystems. Like incredibly important to the ecosystem. I think a lot of times people think like, like they're so aggressive, they attack humans, like we should, cull the populations, like, but it has such like deleterious effects, like all the way down the ecosystem when you take out the thing that actually controls the population of other species.
And it drives me crazy too when there are shark attacks and people are like, "Let's go kill the shark," and they send out these idiots on boats.
It's not like a Rockweiler.
And then they kill a shark, and it's 99.9% of the time that's not the shark that committed the atrocity.
Yeah.
He's somewhere 5 miles away. They're not going to hang around and wait for you to get your act together so you can come and kill him. So it's just needlessly killing sharks just because you feel the need for vengeance. So. But I am interested in the great white activity that is happening in Massachusetts.
There's more of them coming here, right?
So there's a question as to whether there are more coming or if we are tagging more so we have more knowledge of the ones that are here. So I don't know that I feel like you could go either way with that question.
Classic shark or the egg.
It is concerning that there was a great white attack in Maine a few years ago, though.
Right.
I feel like people in Maine thought they were pretty safe. But there is a large population of seals on the Cape, so you're bringing a food source in.
I mean, we're definitely seeing other species follow the changing water temperatures in whichever direction that might be. Mostly it's the warmer waters coming farther north. We even, they were, one of the research agencies in Maine is looking for people to let them know when they see blue crabs in Maine, a blue crab, like the Maryland blue crab.
Oh, wow.
In Maine. But it's because waters are warming.
And we just read a thing the other day that there are reports of lionfish in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Right? No, thank you.
Sneaking in.
Good.
I'd be okay eating them, though.
I don't know if I would.
They taste like snapper. They're good.
I mean, I don't know. You have to really trust the person that's cooking it. Otherwise, forget it.
No, it's easy. It's you just cut off the top spines. It's good.
Okay.
You just need to find someone who will do it.
I like snapper. I've had that.
Snapper is good. It's one of the best fish. Snapper and mahi.
Mahi.
The poison blowfish that I had in Japan, the chefs have to go to school for it, and like part of your graduation, you have to eat your prepared fish.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody has failed that test.
Potentially, I don't know
That would be
any.
humiliating.
Were you nervous?
A little bit. So they also bring you the skin, which has the toxin in it, and it makes your mouth numb when you eat it. But it's like part of the experience. But at first, I was like, "Is this supposed to happen? Is anybody else feeling this? Like, are we sure this is okay?"
I would be so afraid I'd just get so psychosomatic, right? And just be like, my throat is closing. My throat is closing.
I would too.
Yeah,
I would too.
there was a little bit of that feeling in the beginning. The skin definitely made me feel that way, and then when I was eating the fish, I felt like it wasn't worth the danger because it tasted like fish. There wasn't like a magical taste to it or anything.
Right.
I guess it's just the danger of it all, right?
Yeah,
You can
it's
say
kind of like a
experience.
novelty thing.
Exactly.
Yes,
I don't think I had anything like that. No, I feel like when I was in China, it was all pretty The food there is amazing. It's the best food I've ever had. But I don't feel like anything.
You
was
said you were
the
there for a
same.
year, right?
No, I was just there for a summer.
Okay.
I was teaching in Beijing for a private school there.
Were you teaching English or were you teaching?
I was teaching
Biology.
science.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
teaching biology. So, and it was an amazing experience. I loved China. But that was right before COVID. So I'm glad we got out before that because
Yeah.
I feel like I'd probably still be in lockdown.
That's true. Yeah, I was in
Be
Vietnam
stuck in
before
China.
COVID.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Same thing. They were like, "You guys need to leave."
And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
How was Vietnam? That must be really cool there.
It's very cool. Yeah, it's a beautiful country. It's a lot of fun. I've been there a couple times. When I used to be in the Air Force and I was stationed in Japan, so I traveled all over from there. And in Vietnam, you can rent a motorbike and then drive like all over the country. That's what most people do. They like you start in the north and then drive south, or start in the south and drive north.
Wow.
Gosh. Yeah, I definitely need to get out more and see more things.
I'm trying to think. I didn't see any fish there. I don't know if I went to the ocean. But
I'm sure they have fish there, but you just
100% sure they have fish in Vietnam. It's a major part of their
just
diet.
didn't sample it there. No, I need to get out more. I go to Ireland and visit friends every summer, which is really nice.
Nice. Ireland's beautiful.
Love it.
Yeah, my grandmother came to the U.S. from Ireland, so we go over there too.
Oh, what
Nice.
part is she from?
County Cork, she's from the south.
Oh, okay. I stay in the Ring of Kerry in a little village called Shneem.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful.
beautiful.
The Ring of Kerry is amazing.
It's amazing. It's gorgeous. And the people there are so friendly. I get back here and you forget, how aggressive people are.
Yes.
So the second I get back, I'm like angry for no reason. I don't know what just happened. Like I was totally fine when I was over there.
Yeah, it's the American way. I don't know something about
Yeah,
our
right.
culture is competitive.
Especially in New England.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, "Are you talking to me? What are you talking to me for? Something wrong?"
That happened to me when I.
Like, no, just saying hi.
Yep.
Good morning.
I was stationed in Arkansas as my first base before I went over to Japan, and I remember I was standing in line at a Taco Bell, and a random guy tapped me on my shoulder and started talking to me. And in my head, I was starting to get angry, and I was like, "What? Who is this guy? What does he want?" And then at one point, I said, "Excuse me, sir. Like, we don't know each other. What's going on?" He was like, "Just trying to make conversation."
Right?
And
He's
I was
like,
like,
you
"Oh."
must be from Massachusetts, you
Yeah,
dick.
pretty much. I was like, "Oh, I get it now."
Oh my goodness. I know. I moved to California. I don't know how old I was. I must have been maybe 20s, 30s. Yeah, and I like just go to the beach. I'm walking like on one of the like big long piers, and people were like, "Hey, how you doing? Beautiful sunset." Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "What? Talking to me?" Like, oh. Oh yeah.
You're like, I'm busy. What do you want?
Then you just look like a crazy person because you're like,
You're like, I
took
don't have any
so long
cigarettes.
to respond. Yes, exactly. I don't have any cash on me, man. Oh, you're just a normal human. Right. Gotcha.
It's so different in different places, though, because I remember in Florida, you couldn't, if it was a gas station or a grocery store, anywhere that somebody would come up to you in parking lots and just ask for money or whatever. Everywhere that I went in Fort
Yeah,
Lauderdale.
yeah.
And then I got so used to that when I came back up here, I think I was up like in New Hampshire, and I was walking from my car to the store, and this random guy came up to me in the parking lot, and I'm already getting aggressive. And he was literally just like asking what time it was because he left his watch at home. I remember I was doing research with Dave down in the Keys, and we were setting out nets. We were doing minnow trapping for one of his undergrad students. And,
Trapping?
Yeah, so just trapping because they were doing population counts in
You
the
catch them like a little net.
so they were in a seine, but they also had these like little like cages. And I got up early and I saw my advisor sitting out with this giant net, like fixing it. He was like mending it. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "An alligator ran through it last night. We got to fix it before we put it out." And I was like, "Where the hell am I?"
Actually, I worked in Fort Lauderdale, but I lived in Weston. I went down there during the pandemic
Oh,
Ooh, Weston
to
is
get away
nice.
from
So far
cold.
west.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I just went on Craigslist, was like looking for housing, and that was all that I could find at the time.
Yeah.
But we got a flood out there, and my landlord, she sent me a picture of a crocodile
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
like neighborhood. It was in the water, like a foot
was
deep, like in the
crazy.
street.
Yeah,
The
and
crocodiles have really like the populations are increasing down there. Like even I mean, just even in places where you wouldn't imagine it. I lived in a housing complex, apartment complex, like on a major road, but it butted up to this like kind of nature preserve in Hollywood. And crocodiles.
And monkeys. We had
And
wild
monkeys.
monkeys. We had wild monkeys
Are,
there.
are crocodiles invasive? I think I meant alligators. Is that because I was just thought like Florida
there's-
Gators,
there's
the football
both.
team. So.
Yeah, there's both.
They're both there?
Yeah.
Whoa.
They don't. So in a normal world, you would often not necessarily see them in the same space, but the crocodiles have become so opportunistic that they're just going like where the food is, basically.
Aren't they bigger than an alligator?
Not always, but they are more aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing is that the crocodiles down there, though, is they are protected, which is so weird because they have like a hunting season for alligators, but the alligators that live in the known areas of the crocodiles are also protected under that. So somebody doesn't accidentally shoot a crocodile instead of an alligator.
Interesting. Do you think that the alligators have figured that out and then kind of go to where it's safe during hunting season?
I wouldn't give them that much credit. I don't
No?
think. I think they just got lucky if they end up there.
I know that, or at least I've heard that deer do that. Like they kind of know where they get shot during hunting season, and so they'll like go to like golf courses and things like that to avoid.
I think that's true. I have a cousin who lives on Nantucket, and they have deer that lives in his backyard, and he's like, they always just kind of hang around during hunting season because I think they've caught on to the fact that they can't be shot near a house. So they have like pet deer in their backyard all the time.
It's awesome.
It's crazy. It's wild. And then in Florida, they have armadillos, which is insane to me.
Wow, they're just collecting everything there.
It's so bizarre.
Have you seen an armadillo?
I did, yeah.
I saw one in Texas one time.
It was amazing to me because I didn't know we had them.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going up to the fisheries conference in Ocala.
Oh, right, like in the middle of the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because there's a lot of like those arid like scrub areas
Yeah. And they just want nothing to do with us. So me and my friend ran up to one, and he just balled up and like waited for it to be over. We were so
you guys
excited.
like poking it.
No, I knew better because I know that they carry certain things. So
Right.
I just was like, we won't touch them. But he saw us coming a mile away. I was like, nope, not today, Satan.
It's hilarious.
I saw one scurry down a road. I just remember like its tail is what made me realize what I was seeing. I was like, whoa, it's an armadillo. They're real.
And the armadillo's like, whoa, it's a person. Shit, how'd that happen?
I felt the same way about hillbillies when I was in Arkansas. My friend and I like drove to a trailer park, and I remember we saw this guy. He had like a houseboat that was just like on blocks, and he had on leopard print pajama pants, and he had a mullet, and he was in rubber boots. He was raking leaves in his front yard.
Oh my God.
And I
I
remember
hope that you stopped and hung out with him.
it burned into my head just because my friend was from Connecticut, and so we were both really just excited to be in the South, and so we just would drive around and see like the stereotypes and be like, wow, it's real, look at that.
But those are the people you want to like hang out with because they're going to be those interesting
Absolutely.
people. Who are like, what the hell?
Yeah.
We had a lot of hillbillies. I had a guy in Florida at an airboat show. Don't ask me why I was there. Who was like, "Can I show you something?" I was like, "Okay." And he pulled me over to where his stand was, and he had a baby alligator in a cooler. And he's like, "Do you want to buy this?" And I'm like, "No."
You know they grow, right, dude? That's the problem. That's where all those snakes come from. People are like, "Oh, I'm gonna own this exotic species," and then it grows,
Yeah, and they just let
and
it
then
go.
they're like,
right?
"I don't know what to do with it. Just let it out the back door."
Somebody else's problem.
Idiots. Good God. Florida.
A wild place. It's fun. It's an endless source of fun, but it's
Well,
also
there was a
God.
lot of amusement at all times.
Yeah.
Not always, there's some times where you're like, it's just not safe because people
Yeah.
don't use common sense down there. And
It's
you're
true.
like, any second I could be killed. by some-
and they're all cooked by the sun.
We had a neighbor who lived in a complex, and all the dumpsters, as you know, are inside the buildings because they can't be outside in the heat. And one of our jackass neighbors decided, I'm going to pour my hot grill coals down the chute into the garbage and lit the building on fire. And I was like, this is great. This is how I die. Like, it was great.
Sounds about right.
What is that? There's that one comedian. I see her on like TikTok and Instagram, and she sings that She sings that song. It's Florida Man Friday. So she'll like tell the story while she's like playing the piano. On this day when I can't remember her name. She's a female comedian.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
I'll
She
find
always has a story about Florida Man.
Yeah, they release their news. That's something that's different about the state. That's why they're like so notorious around the country, because they actually like it's public. They allow their news to be public record, whereas some other states don't. So it gets out more. The crazy things people do there.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think anything surprises you there. Like the first time I went down, I was living up here and I went down to Key West, and we couldn't leave the island for 2 days because there had been an explosion in a car. There had been a car bomb. I don't know if you remember that.
Where was it?
On the main highway down. There was a car bombing. And then we found out after the fact they had closed down the road because it was an active investigation. And we found out later it was a guy who tried to kill his wife.
Ooh.
She didn't die.
That's good.
But
Was
it
she in
was
the
like
car?
an extra. Yeah, she was in the car. But he must have just messed it up so bad that it came back to him. And I was like, oh, this is what Florida does. Okay.
I almost didn't make it to grad school because I was living in Key West at the time, and I was going up to Fort Lauderdale to go to grad school, and I packed up my car, grabbed my cat, drove north, and I'm driving, and I'm on the 7-mile bridge. It's about 7 miles, and as I'm getting like towards the end of the 7 miles, all these emergency vehicles are passing me, and I was like, whoa, I wonder what happened. Turns out there was a truck that flipped over on the 7-mile bridge, like while I was on it, caught on fire. The fire was so intense and burned for so long, and they weren't able to maintain it, that it cracked the cement, and they closed the 7-mile bridge for like more than 24 hours.
Which is the only way off the islands.
It was like, I almost didn't make it to grad school. Like,
It's so
it was
crazy.
minutes from not being able to get there.
So do you have any interest in ocean stuff?
I love the ocean.
Do you have any favorites?
I don't.
You need to get yourself a favorite,
Yes.
first of all.
I have so many favorites.
I
It's hard
will
to choose.
have one when we come back around to it. But
Nice.
I would like to know your favorite.
Well, I am a Gemini, and I cannot choose only one thing ever.
Okay.
Because there's so many cool things. But one of my absolute favorite things is actually a bird. It's a tern, right? So terns are seabirds, just they're related to gulls. So the black skimmers,
Okay.
they're one of the largest terns.
A black skimmer tern.
A black skimmer tern, yes, they're a tern species, and their lower mandible, right? So of their beak, their lower mandible is longer than their top, so that they can skim the surface of the water and like collect fish.
Interesting.
And they're like their little their beaks, they kind of look like candy corn, like they're like
Okay.
white and then black and then orange. They're so pretty.
So it's a clown-looking bird with the underbite.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it's funny that it has an underbite, and then that would be like something that's attractive, like to a mate, right? As a species, that's wicked funny. So like the
He's so
female would
pretty.
look at the
But like,
male
look
with
at
the.
this. Look at that.
the
Then you
extensive
can really see
underbite.
like
Okay,
what
now I
a
see
cool
it.
bird it is, right? Such a cool bird. Oh yeah, look at that. See, he's skimming.
Wow. Okay, that's
yeah,
cool.
so I wonder if that would be the driving factor for the female, is like the length of the lower jaw.
Oh, I mean, kind of what size are your feet?
Well, it's like the blue-footed boobies in the
Yeah.
Galapagos.
Oh, I got to see
Right?
them do their little dance.
Wow.
Yep.
Did you go down there to the Galapagos?
Yeah,
Did you see Galapagos turtles?
I did. Yes. Yep. I saw the turtles. I saw the
Finches.
finches. Yeah, I was on a grad school trip, actually. It was like almost a 3-week trip. It was incredible. And we went to, I think, 4 different islands. It was amazing.
I would
Highly
love to see
recommend.
a blue-footed booby.
Was there a Darwin museum or anything like that down there?
Was there an actual museum? So a lot of it is national park. So there's definitely like national park visitor centers. So yeah, in that way, I think there is. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but yeah, probably just like the national park, visitor centers or what have like all the information. So fascinating.
In terms of sea birds, I think my favorite is a puffin.
Oh, absolutely.
See, I've never seen one yet.
They're very cute. I've been to Iceland, and
Puffins are amazing.
They are.
Well, I think I saw one at the cliffs of Moher, but it was like that big, so I can't be sure. I mean, it could have been a seagull. I don't know.
Something that really surprised me in Iceland, I think it's just because it's the scarcity and that it's an island, but they also eat puffins.
Do they really?
They do.
They?
Yeah.
I mean,
did you eat one?
I did not.
Their populations are pretty abundant, I think. Like, I wouldn't imagine that
But they're so cute.
they're very
was
The
cute.
what
problem
surprised
is
me.
we
Yeah.
want to not eat cute things.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's true.
So if we, it's not true though. I think cows are cute, and I still have no problem with that.
Yeah, it's like, I wish maybe you weren't so cute, but I'm still going to eat you.
I mean, you're adorable and yummy.
Yeah. One of the things I really wanted to see when I was in the Galapagos was a Galapagos penguin, because there's one species that lives right on the equator, right? So like,
Do they wear sunglasses?
And sunblock.
Yeah. They're the chill penguins.
they are pretty chill. They're small. They're a little small bird, but they actually do like cross the equator, which
wow.
then, so like they're rebels, right? Like they don't stay like below the line, even though, the penguins are only in the southern hemisphere, right? But people think, like, have you ever seen those old, like, photoshopped photos of like a polar bear and a penguin? You would never see that, right? One's in the northern hemisphere, one's in the southern hemisphere.
Couldn't they go through the middle?
Well, they might. Is there like a fireman's pole like that goes?
Could be.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
We'll never know. But yeah, so we were like part of our crew was diving and part of us were snorkeling. And we were just in this area. It was like our fourth spot that we went to that day. I was exhausted. The current was ripping. So I just told my three partners, I was like, I'm going back to the boat. So I go back to the boat and like the guys on the boat like are helping me off with my wetsuit, and one guy's handing me a glass of wine, and we're just chatting in my terrible Spanish and their pretty decent English. And all of a sudden I turn around and I see this penguin. So like my friend Kelly is snorkeling. He's got his head down. And there's a penguin who's also got his head down, and he's swimming, and I'm screaming, "Penguino! Penguino! Penguino!" I'm like, "Kelly, Penguino!" And right at that moment, Kelly finally hears me, and he looks up, and the penguin looks up, and they both look at each other, and then the penguin just like darts away, and I was like, "Penguino!" I was like screaming like a crazy person.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. If I had
moment.
my camera out, I was like, "Oh my God, Kelly, did that really happen?" He was like, "Oh my God."
I think I'd rather swim with penguins than sharks.
For sure.
It seems more unique. Yeah. Probably a little less dangerous.
Just don't let some crazy woman be screaming and scare the penguin away.
Yeah, birds do tend to seem to be like a little shy with humans, so.
They know.
So what else is your favorites other than
Yeah, do you have any
the
fish?
I
You say
think-
you get a whole bunch, right? So like
It's
we've
so
covered
many.
the bird.
It depends on if we're eating it or if we're just admiring it.
Yeah, and admiration.
One of my absolute favorite fish is the remora. They have like, those they're kind of like a really dark gray, sometimes black fish with those white stripes, and they're the ones that hang out with sharks and rays and other large fish that are usually like faster open ocean fish. And they have these like discs that are actually on the top of their head that they can suction on to the animal that they're technically parasitic.
Okay.
But it's
But it's a fish.
it's not commensalism, right? Because the shark doesn't benefit.
it's not mutualism. I think it's commensalism.
Commensalism,
Yeah.
right. So the remora is benefiting. He's catching a ride and he gets scraps to eat.
And
Nice.
the shark's not hurt. And that's why you hang out
Right,
with
the
sharks
shark's
too,
not
is
hurt.
to get free food, really.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna evolve to be anything, you just like be this fish that catches a free ride and eats all the scraps from another fish.
Did you figure yours out yet?
I think it's the turtle. I like turtles.
Which turtle?
All right, you're getting there. Yeah. The marine,
Like
marine
sea turtle,
biology.
land turtle.
Green turtle,
Yeah.
Kemp's Ridley, Loggerhead.
The one from Finding Nemo. I like to think that they're like that.
Yeah, that was a Kemp's Ridley, right? Yeah.
What? One more time.
Kemp's Ridley.
Kemp's Ridley.
I think so. I think those were the
It
Kemp's
was either
Ridleys.
that or a green turtle.
Or an olive. Olive Ridley. I don't know.
It was in
in
Australia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it caught
Adorable.
the sea, the stream.
The
What do
current.
they call it?
Yep.
The EAC.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. It was Crush was the dad.
So
Yeah.
And Squirt
Yeah.
was the baby one. Yeah.
Finding Nemo was really there were so many things about it that were scientifically accurate,
That's exciting.
except for the sea turtle part. Like the juveniles would never hang out with the parents.
How about the interspecies communication? Is that happening down there?
When they were gossiping. I think my favorite was the dolphins when they were like, talking above the water and then back under the water.
It's got to be though. They have to be communicating.
I think
In
so.
some way, I would think.
They have to.
Did
Yeah.
you know that the guy who wrote that is from Rockport?
I didn't know that.
Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
Huh.
Where to find
Fun
him?
fact.
All right, get him in the book. I'll get
I
him in
know.
the pod.
Actually, yeah, we should go find.
Let's go
Excuse
find him.
me,
We'll find him.
sir.
Where is he?
You want to be in a book and on a podcast?
I noticed that you too like the ocean environment.
Uh,
We'll have so many stupid questions for him.
I think I was going to call them pearls. What produces pearls? Oysters. I think oysters are impressive that they produce pearls, and that
For
humans
sure.
have
They're
become
very,
obsessed
very
with
cool. So we have a native species of oyster here, but we also in Beverly and Salem have an invasive species.
them. Pearls.
I haven't found any pearls in them yet, but they do have parasites. So they're bad for
Not
our
as valuable.
they're bad for our native oysters because the parasites don't harm them, but they harm the native oysters. So another one to add to the asshole list.
So the asshole oysters
Yes.
brought the parasites, and the parasites don't affect the asshole oysters, but then they attack the native oysters.
Yes. So, and this is the thing, we could make a fisheries for them except parasites. That's not really a great selling
also, I don't
point.
think there's a whole lot of meat in them, right?
No,
Yeah.
they're flat oysters. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's not a lot.
There's not a lot going on in there.
But those were accidentally released by a aquatic facility in Salem. So
Oh, they
that's
can
why
actually
we-
trace it back to the origin of. Can they do that with a lot of invasive species? Can they figure out like how
Yeah.
and when they got here?
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of the marine invasives come from shipping. They have to take in water for ballast in one port, and then they have to release it
Oh,
in
I
another
see.
port, right? Because oftentimes they're delivering goods, right? So as they take more off, they become more buoyant. They need more, and then they have to release it, and they just all those little larvae. They
Finding
have-
Nemo every day.
Yeah, exactly. Poor Nemo.
I think there are a lot of controls now.
It's hard
Like a
though
lot
when
of
you have
filter
like
controls, but,
zooplankton. You
mean,
can't do anything about zooplankton.
It's microscopic.
Yeah.
Except for the whales, right? They eat a lot of zooplankton.
Yes,
They
they
do.
do. They love it. So we don't want to take their food
The
sources
baleen
either.
whales do.
I think the large whales are also really impressive. Like, what's the largest whale? Is it a blue whale?
Is it blue or sperm? I can't remember.
I think it's blue whale.
Blue.
But then you have whale sharks, which are not technically whales, but they're the biggest sharks.
Well, they're sharks. And it comes back to sharks.
Now, I will always bring it back to sharks. Also, isn't it the blue whale that has like the incredibly low population? Like, below-
Right whales do.
Is it the right whales?
Yeah, it's sad
They're
to
like
see.
10.
Whoa,
I
that's
think
alarming.
I think maybe there's like 20.
Still not good. We want as
No.
many as there should
No,
be.
there's yeah.
Well, this is the problem too. Is you have the incidence of them coming into contact with boats, so they get injured that way. And then in the fisheries areas, we have what's called ghost gear, which is fishing gear that's been left behind. And a lot of our marine mammals get tangled up in that and end up drowning.
Yeah, my friend is a fisherman. Talks about losing gear and gear getting chopped up all the time, and other fishermen, same, like losing things. So I can see how it's a massive issue.
Now, for me, I know that a lot of the fingers have been pointed at the lobster fishermen when it comes to the ghost gear, but I don't think that that's our problem. I think the trawlers are the big issue.
Yeah, they're
And-
pulling up the whole
yeah.
bottom, right?
Yes, exactly. So I don't think the lobstermen are the ones that should be getting the fingers pointed at them. Honestly,
I mean, yeah, like it's in the grand scheme of fishing apparatus, like it's one of the least invasive. They have found in Florida. I think they were
Just a little
trying
closer
to.
Just pull it back.
So I think they've been trying to like somehow make them heavier, but of course then if you aren't using a hydraulic pulley system to get them up and you're just doing it by hand, then that's a problem. But a lot of during the storms, the traps will drag through the seagrass beds. So in Florida, that can be a problem. But I mean, yeah, like the trawlers that are just
destroying everything. And then with our so we have long lining boats too, which a lot of the times those are like the industrial fishing boats. So they'll have like 40 miles of line.
Whoa.
And then they'll have these lines that come down off of it every, I don't know, probably half a mile or whatever, that are, it's got hooks all down it. So that's our long liners. They used to use these hooks that were called J hooks, which would actually decimate any sort of invasive or any sort of species that got on the line. But they, about probably 10 years ago, they regulated that they need to start using circle hooks because a lot of the time sharks will get caught on them. They were getting, and they still do get a lot of birds that are caught. A lot of marine mammals get caught. So we have what's called incidental bycatch. So it's the animals that got killed that you weren't targeting. And we have a massive amount of incidental bycatch with these larger fishing industries. So, and you don't get that with the smaller fisheries.
Yeah.
Is there instances of poaching in other countries, like invading our fishing areas anywhere in Massachusetts or on the New England region?
Well, I think that that's a problem in international waters. So state waters, everything is very heavily regulated in each state's waters.
How far is our state water line?
7 miles?
I'm not sure exactly.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
3 miles? 7 miles. 7 miles.
3 to 7.
And the problem that you have too is we have, so in Massachusetts, you might have these species that are protected, right? So we have for example, poor beagle sharks are protected in Massachusetts.
Beagle sharks?
Poor beagles.
Poor beagle.
So they are related to great white sharks. They're a pelagic shark, so they're further out, and they're regulated in Massachusetts. But then you go over that invisible line, say to Canada, and they're no longer protected. So this is a problem when you have state by state regulations as opposed to universal regulations. Is they don't know that the fish don't know that invisible line that they just crossed over.
All of a sudden, they're being eaten.
Yes, all of a sudden they're being targeted.
What is one of the biggest problems that you see happening to our coastline in our region? Plastic.
Climate change.
Yeah, I mean, if in Rockport, especially, the massive amount of plastic, just the way that the currents are. It's not that Rockport's,
Right.
putting the most plastic in the water. It's just that the currents are pulling it up in that area, but massive amounts of plastic.
Yeah, they said that during COVID, actually, they noticed like all the tourist areas, like plastic and water contamination went way down.
It did.
So is there anything that's being done? Are there groups of people, like I know there's like beach cleanup weekends and volunteer things like that, but are there any kind of groups or like grants or programs that are specifically cleaning up plastic?
Well, I think it's
area?
helpful that a lot of the grocery stores stopped using plastic bags or supplying plastic bags. I think that's huge.
NOAA does have a marine pollution department. I don't work for that department, so I don't really know exactly what that entails, but they are trying to mitigate the amount of plastic that ends up in the ocean, and then also working to help like clean it up in some way. Honestly, we can go do beach cleanups all we want, but the only way to stop plastic getting into the ocean is to stop using it. And that's never going to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like that's the case.
But I think Gabby's right too. We're seeing a lot of different changes with climate change.
Yeah, ocean acidification is a huge, huge problem, and that is directly a result of warming waters, warming sea surface temperatures.
So the danger with that on like our, even just a low level area, even we'll say like for some of the species that we've looked at. So I said earlier how organisms need calcium carbonate to be able to build up their shells. So they're taking that from the water around them, especially the carbon. As things heat up, there's a lot of carbon that's being released from the ocean that was held there. So we're seeing a lot more carbon being released into the atmosphere. That carbon is no longer available for them to be able to use in the water. So we are seeing in areas where there's warmer water, the shells are much thinner in a lot of our snails and a lot of our clams. And because of that, predators are able to kill them off more easily because they can't build their shells up. So, and we're definitely seeing that in a lot of the tidal areas.
We encountered a lot of dogs in our travels. I think there was this whole, so I think we mentioned that like we would just make TikTok videos, like when we were mostly just to entertain ourselves, being on the beach.
Was watching that.
Yeah. Wait, what do we have? 180 followers.
That's how it starts.
But so we would always have all these dogs, and some of our TikTok videos would just be dogs. Like I think there's one whole video that's just all dogs. There'd just be like so many dogs. Rockport, people would just 7 a.m. there'd be people. Like,
Yeah, it's one of the
out
best
with their
things
dogs.
about the off season here is you can bring your dogs to the beach.
Yeah,
And you get to see dogs on the beach, which
Yeah.
is even better.
Absolutely.
have you been to that dog bar in Everett?
No.
It's
Called
really cool.
Park 9.
Or you can bring your dog.
It's for dogs.
I used to live in LA, so you can bring your dogs everywhere out there.
Yeah.
I remember
In Florida.
I like sat up at a bar and this dog jumped onto my lap before I even saw it. I was like, oh, what the heck? I knew you could bring dogs here.
This place is cool though. So there's like a ton of dogs there, and they're just running around being dogs.
He is not a dog's dog.
Oh.
He's got border collie in him, so he's very smart. So my joke is like when dogs come to him, he's like, "Do I look like a dog to you?" Like, he doesn't act. He doesn't play. He doesn't sniff. He just waits for them to be done and then he walks away.
Oh, he's got no patience for the
Yeah.
nonsense.
He's also too pretty. Some dogs they try to mount him quite frequently,
Oh.
and he doesn't.
He knows you're talking about him.
He's like, don't tell them that, Dad. Oh, God. You're ruining my cool mood.
He's scared. He's scared of the door too. The pushback gets him. I gotta let him out every time.
Yeah.
Silly. He says, Dad, fight the door for me. Do it.
The guy that built him said he pushed it over with his nose to make sure the dog could do it.
And the dog's like, open the door.
guy did pushed
Yes.
it with his own nose.
And now the dog's like, open the door for me, servant.
Oh god.
So, in all of your travels and experience, what do you feel makes the North Shore of Massachusetts unique?
I don't know. I just love the vibe up here. I love that first of all, New England is like a nice place because everybody pretty much knows their neighbors, which is great. So it's like more of a sense of community. I didn't have that in Florida. I didn't know the people lived next door to me, honestly.
They don't want you to know them.
They do not. You walk outside and you're like, hi. And they're like, Jesus. And they run inside and slam the door.
They go get their gun.
So I love the sense of community here. We have some of the most beautiful landscapes up here. Like we have the beaches, but then we also have all these nature preserves. There's always something to do outdoors here, which is great. Weather permitting.
Yeah. Although we were out there in 20-degree weather. I don't know what's wrong with people. But it's very true of like all states or all regions that the ecosystems are, it changes so quickly depending on, a slight change in elevation or, which way the tide is running or whatever. But it's really true up here that just in just in like the 6 locations that we've done our sampling at, from Salem to Ipswich, Gloucester, Rockport, that each of them is wildly different than the other one. That's, like Salem and Beverly is like a protected cove kind of, right? Magnolia is like open ocean, wave action. There's nothing fun to look at in the tide pools there because it's just all been like, even the algae is just like tiny little pieces. It's just been really beat up, right? And then, like Ipswich is more
beach grass up in Ipswich.
Yeah, there's a lot of that beach grass. It's more sort of like soft sediment. Just every different location is so different depending on how it's facing the ocean, how much wave action it gets. I just think that it's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's really exciting. There's something that's unique about this area is how much like coastline there is and how jagged of a line we have. What is something like positive and impactful that like your average person could do, like by the beach or near the ocean, or to help interact or increase the health of the ocean or mitigate the destruction that's happening?
I think a big thing is, and again, a lot of people do it, just don't take the shells. Leave the shells, but take pictures if you want to. No, we're all guilty of it. Like, these are fake. Just kidding, it's plastic. But also, we've seen a lot of people just like up and leave trash on the beach, like, and they say, oh, they don't have like garbage bins at the beach. No shit, because they want you to take your stuff with you. You don't just leave it there, and we've seen that a lot. It's
one of the most common conversations on the Beverly Facebook pages during COVID, because darn that,
DPW took the garbage can.
It was the mayor. They were all blaming it on our poor mayor. They took away our garbage cans. I would like troll them all by like taking a picture of my like garbage in my hand and be like, finished my 3-mile walk, had my coffee and my croissant, brought my trash home. I was constantly just like posting, because how hard is it? Like, how hard is it?
I think the important thing too is for people to educate themselves about
Absolutely.
the environment around them. And I think, once people start understanding, recognizing, and being comfortable with things, then they start to care about things a lot more. And this is why ecotourism is amazing, because it gets people to actually care and want to preserve these things and want to, keep these areas pristine. And yeah, it's like the garbage, and just be mindful of what you're doing.
I mean, and I'm going to bring it back to climate change and just say, like, truly, honestly, like, everyone needs to reduce their carbon footprint. And if you don't know what that means, like, just look it up. Like, it is, there are so many things that we can do to reduce our carbon footprint. Now, are we humans, and do we need to get on planes and go fly places? Absolutely. So then how else do you mitigate that? How do you offset like the things that you do use? There are so many teeny tiny little things that you can do that make a great impact, like unplugging your phone chargers when your phone is not charging.
Interesting.
Think about all the things that you have in your house that is drawing power off of the grid. So many things that we just leave plugged in when they're not in use, right? Like, again, we are humans. We function in the world. Like, we also like necessities, right? So you don't necessarily have to sacrifice anything that you do to reduce your carbon footprint. You can unplug things when they're not in use. You can lower your air conditioning when you're not home. Like, your air conditioning doesn't need to be at 62 degrees when no one is there. Like,
unless you have pets.
Yeah, but even then it could be at 70 or 75. Like, my cats are fine. They like it when it's warm. They sleep in the sun. There's so many things that we can do using less plastic, using, less things, like using, if you are able, walking, to the corner store instead of driving. There are just so many things. And it's surprising how quickly it does add up, and that we all have the ability to offset the times when we do need to be drawing off of the grid or things like that, because every single one of those is directly affecting the amount of energy that we use, which directly affects the climate change. And that's my soapbox. I'll get back on down now.
I'm curious what your opinion on windmills are in the ocean, and the vibrations that they cause, and the echolocation, and the damages that have been caused to the sea life by that.
I think that more research needs to be done on the effects of that. I know that there is a lot of conversation right now about that affecting lobster populations in New England, and I have not seen the hard data on it yet.
What's
I'm
more
not
theory?
I think it's anecdotal at this point. I'm not saying that it's not true. That is how we decide to do science, is from anecdotal evidence. So there is a benefit to anecdotal evidence, but I think making broad regulations based on anecdotal evidence is it's a little tricky step, right? So I think that we need to definitely do that research. Then you also have to benefit the cost versus you have to look at the cost versus benefits, right? And weigh those two together, because that's sort of always what we have to do. Obviously, we don't want to be changing the course of whale populations. We know how quickly a whale population can decline when humans get involved. So we definitely don't need to go back there. But I think we need to figure that out. We also need alternative sources of energy. So I don't know.
Double-edged sword.
Yes.
And I think especially at what they're seeing off at the vineyard right now with the wind turbines that have been breaking and the debris all over the ocean and coming up on the shores. And I think people are now just realizing these large blades from these wind turbines are not recyclable. They're not. I don't think people were educated enough to really make the decisions that were asked of them.
Feels like a lot of people take the ocean for granted and think that it's
For
kind
sure.
of just a easily replenishable, renewable resource.
Dilution is the solution to pollution. Wasn't that like the? I don't know who started that, but that was like a
Sounds good.
70s. It was like a 70s thing, right? It's like dump it in the ocean.
Oh, geez.
Dump everything in the ocean. It'll be fine.
What is the title of your field guide, and when can we expect it?
It's a working title. We've had a
Excellent.
couple.
That's fun.
One was
It's gonna be like it's gonna take up the whole page.
we definitely want to put the word pandemic in there somewhere, since that's what gave us the idea. But we are actively working. We just finished data analysis, so we've been working on that, and now we've got to look at the structure and setup. And we have some professionals around the area who have agreed to help us to be sure that the species that we're identifying are actually. I'm terrible with algae, so we have people who are going to help with that, right? I mean, I could send it to you if you want to help.
I would hope that in a year we have, like by January 2026, that we have an actual copies to distribute.
Yeah.
That would be my hope. And our sort of working title is just the Field Guide to the North Shore of New England, right? Or like
unoriginal,
or the North Shore of Massachusetts, right? Or, and then this is where we have all of our subtitles. What two bored scientists do during a pandemic.
That's a fun title.
I mean, it just rolls off the tongue, I think.
Yeah, it leaves some suspense. It's like, what do they do during the pandemic?
But while we're working on stuff, we're actively posting things on our TikTok channel, which is Marinebiologics.
Marinebiolochicks, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll put all links in the description. and everything.
Yeah, we're going to be, our next thing that we're looking at, even though we're not even done with this, is we're going to be looking at Cape Cod and the islands and doing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
It's like a series, like the next field guide.
That's
Awesome.
that's our hope. Yeah, so we can do Cape Cod and the islands. We could do Maine, but then I'd also like to do like other ecosystems,
Yeah.
right?
The
So
ocean's
do
big.
do like some riverine, even some
Salt
like
marshes.
forest, the vernal pools.
I mean, let's face it. There's assholes in every environment. We're gonna find them.
That's exciting.
We're gonna find them. We're gonna call them out.
Well, I think that's an excellent end. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
I've had a great time talking with you guys.
Oh,
And
it's
we'll
just
do
been so fun.
we'll do it again when your book comes out. We'll do like a launch episode.
yes,
We'll have a
thank
party or
you.
something for it.
We'll actually have a title.
Yeah.
Thanks,
It'll be
Jake.
great.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.